Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Thanks for joining me, Rabbi Michael Tevye Cohen. What I'd like to do in the program today is, number one, share 5 pieces of music, including the one that we led off with, that are all attributed to or based on the lyrics from Song of Songs, each of them beautiful in their own way. Then, in addition to that, I'd like to read to you 3 passages from the song, one from chapter 1, then from chapter 2, and finally from chapter 5. And the third thing that I like to do in this presentation is share some of the perspectives that I have found very interesting and insightful to understand the Song of Songs a little better. You've just heard that I open this presentation with is called Erev Shel Shoshanim, the Evening of Roses. And it's a beautiful song that's well known. You may well have heard it and be familiar with it. Erev Shel Shoshanim is actually not part of the text of the Song of Songs, but it's very much of a piece with Song of Songs. It's evocative of the imagery. Text includes many of the same words and notions. Let me just read it to you in English. Evening of Roses. Let us go out to the grove. Myrrh and spices and frankincense is the carpet under your feet. Night falls slowly and a wind of rose blows. Let me whisper a song for you slowly, a song of love. Dawn and the dove coos. Your hair is full of dewdrops. Your lips are as roses unto the morning. I will pick them for myself. These lyrics are very much of a piece with Song of Songs. It evokes the images of nature and the setting of a tete-a-tete between 2 lovers going out into nature. I want to give credit to that beautiful rendition we just heard. It's the Newark Academy Concert Choir, directed by a gentleman who there pictured in the video, Viraj Lal. And it's a beautiful job. And you can see from the setting that that is a fruit of this era of pandemic from last May. Let me just read a passage for you. Kiss me. Make me drunk with your kisses. Your sweet loving is better than wine. You are fragrant. You are myrrh and aloes. All the young women want you. Take me by the hand, let us run together. My lover, my king has brought me into his chambers. We will laugh, you and I, and count each kiss better than wine. Every one of them wants you. I am dark, daughters of Jerusalem, and I am beautiful. Dark as the tents of Kedar, lavish as Solomon's tapestries. Do not see me only as dark. The sun has stared at me. My brothers were angry with me. They made me guard the vineyards, but I have not guarded my own. If you were to sit down and look at the Song of Songs, open the text, you might find it a bit confusing, quite frankly, have some trouble figuring out how is this supposed to be read. So I want to share some of the understandings that I've gained from looking into this story. What makes this love poem, Song of Songs, so difficult to follow is that the perspective as you read changes from that of the female lover to the male lover, back and forth without warning. The male lover, you're not sure from her words about him whether he's a king, King Solomon, or whether he's a shepherd. It goes back and forth. The physical location that seems to be mentioned in which this takes place might be Ein Gedi or it might be up in the mountains of Lebanon. It roams over a great distance and it shifts back and forth, a kaleidoscope of different images. But the Song of Songs is also so interesting because of the female perspective, which it's a mutual courting and attraction and admiration that's described in this love poem, not just of the male for the female. And in that sense, it's an empowering step away from the tradition of most of our biblical texts. I want to look at what that means, the empowerment of female sensuality and sexuality in the context of the ancient world. There are ancient love poems that have been recovered from Sumeria, Mesopotamia, and Egypt, and Canaan, the people of Canaan who preceded the Israelites. So whether this text is unique in the ancient times is a fair question. There are differences in all of these other texts that I've mentioned. It's describing the love encounters between gods and gods, or gods and humans. The Song of Songs does not identify either persona as a god. The male lover and the female lover appear to be young, virile human beings. The ancient texts of Sumeria, Mesopotamia, etc., also were a bit more graphic, even though this appears to be something that was debated. The Song of Songs was debated among the sages, the rabbinic sages. Some of them didn't feel it belongs in our Bible because it's too erotic. But compared to the other ancient love poems, it's actually a bit less graphic. That brings up the point about eros. Eros is the Greek word for love. And in the ancient world, fertility rites of ancient religions were part of what basically described their religions. There were pagan priest and priestess prostitutes. So the love poems, love songs of these more ancient cultures have to do with the basic conception of what religion was, ensuring fertility for the crops and the holdings of the people of these ancient places. That's not the same when we get to ancient Jewish tradition. In fact, there's very little female erotic power left when the rabbis get through with putting the text together for our Bible. So the Song of Songs, among other pieces, doesn't necessarily fit in there as a smooth, obvious choice to have in the texts. However, one scholar describes this as some dialectical tension between the different texts that came to compose our Hebrew Bible. And that offers a breadth of different ways of dealing with God and religion. I'm going to present our next song, Dodi Li. And many of you may be familiar with it. It's often played at weddings. My beloved Dodi Li. And note also the occurrence of the word Shoshanim in the first verse, which is the word for roses, something that's a recurrent image in the Song of Songs and appears in many of the songs that come from the Song of Songs.
Dodi
It's not true that there is no sensuality or sexuality in our Jewish texts. In the texts of the prophets, we see Israel described over and over again as, but in very negative terms, even misogynistic by some rights, as a wanton woman, a harlot, somebody who has strayed from her husband and her covenantal relationship with God. There's very little about female sensuality in the other writings of the Bible that is positive. However, a very notable exception in our liturgy for Shabbat and for the daily prayers of the Shema. If you remember, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. Those words are very much part of and reflective of a love and covenantal marriage relationships. The prophets used those words too, and the rabbis took them and made them the central part of our Shema prayer. So there are some moments where the sensuality is present and even celebrated, but the Song of Songs stands far above, head and shoulders above anything else in the Hebrew Bible. My love, I dreamed of you as a mare, my very own, among Pharaoh's chariots. My king lay down beside me, and my fragrance wakened the night. All night between my breasts, my love is a cluster of myrrh, a sheaf of henna blossoms in the vineyards of Ein Gedi. And you, my beloved, how beautiful you are. Your eyes are doves. You are beautiful, my king, and gentle. Wherever we lie, our bed is green, our roof beams are cedar, our rafters fir. Let me make a couple of points about chapter 1, textually. One of them is that we see towards the end of chapter 1, the mention of the lover, male lover, visualizes the female as one of Pharaoh, the mares of Pharaoh's chariot, strong, powerful, incredibly beautiful being. And the mention of Pharaoh's chariot there is one of the few links in the Song of Songs by which the rabbi said this belongs in our liturgical calendar, something we read on Passover. It's not immediately obvious why that one reference to Pharaoh at the end of chapter 1 should take the whole Song of Songs poem and bring it to a regular way we observe Passover. But that's why I'm doing the Lunch and Learn this Passover week, because there has been traditionally this association. Another thing to point out here about Jewish rabbinical thinking is that there is a perpetual inclination to look at biblical texts through other biblical texts. That's the way the sages know the Bible, and they pull out a verse from Ecclesiastes or Proverbs or one of the prophets to make a point. And the Song of Songs is often brought in to make the point of the love relationship between God and Israel, that it's so powerful that even though Israel stray, as the passage of the golden calf in Parashat Ki Tisa, the original sin, as it were, not the going back to the garden for the individual sins of human beings, but as a people, that no sooner had God taken us out of Egypt, had brought us through the Red Sea, brought us to Mount Sinai, but while Moses was away, we sinned right away and had Aaron create this golden calf. So what the Song of Songs provides to the rabbis is, look, though we sinned, God still loves us. And there's one verse in particular that is frequently cited by different rabbis. I am dark but comely. The rabbis viewed this as an admission of some sense that there was a darkness, a stain, we've sinned, and yet there's a beauty to us that God can't resist and welcomes us to return. So these are some of the imagery that I wanted to bring forth from chapter 1. There's also a point at which there's a mention of my love is like a dove in the cleft in the rock, and that also harkens back to the imagery of Parashat Ki Tisa, when Moses asked God, let me see your face. And God says to Moses, no one can see my face and live, but I will lift you and put you in a cleft in the rock, and you will see me. I will pass by and you can see me from the side. So that imagery from Song of Songs also harks back to that very portion of the Torah in Ki Tisa. So one scholar who I enjoyed reading her work about the Song of Songs, Ilana Pardes, suggests that the placement of Song of Songs into the canon of the Hebrew Bible is a restorative correction to the canon as a whole, which left out more focus on eros and more attention to the female voice. These things are restored, and they contribute to perhaps why Rabbi Akiva said this piece of writing is so important to be in the Hebrew Bible. There are a number of different chapters, not all of which I'll read in the course of this presentation, but I really want to get to the essence of why is this book of the Torah, one of our 5 scrolls, considered to be holy and in our sacred canon. And by Rabbi Akiva, he said this is the Holy of Holies. He was playing, I think, on Song of Songs, but the Holy of Holies refers to the innermost sanctum of either the tabernacle or the temple, where only the high priest could go. And that's the esteem in which the sages, at least some of them, held Song of Songs. And it's a fertile river for a fountain for music, art, and imagery throughout Western culture. I'm going to focus on some of the beautiful songs that have emerged in Hebrew and Jewish tradition. And I also want to wrestle with the question, what does it mean to say that this is so holy? Why is this sensuous literature full of imagery of nature, both flora and fauna. The lovers alternately compare each other to fir and cedars, or to gazelles and doves, and fruit and fragrant herbs. There's a lot of fragrance in this text. So I'm really curious to wrestle with and I hope share with you what makes this text so holy. How does it achieve that status? And I think the answer comes back to the spiritual seeker who is seeking to envision and invest in a relationship with God that is complete. God that we don't see, God that we don't hear, God that cannot be captured. How can this kind of a love relationship? It's for the spiritual seeker. It's this conception that God can be loved and engaged with intimately. And I'll come back to that in several different ways, trying to convey this point across. Another song that I'd like to share with you next is written from the lyrics in chapter 2, which we're going to turn to after this song called Kumi Lach, which means come away, my love. This is written by the brilliant songwriter Debbie Friedman, for whom the School of Sacred Music at the Hebrew Union College is now named. Hope you enjoy this. And now I want to share with you chapter 2 of the Song of Songs. Beautiful, sensuous, from verses 1 to 14. Listen here for the alternation of the voice of the male lover and the female lover. Also, all the imagery of nature. Here, chapter 2. I am the rose of Sharon, the wild lily of the valleys, like a lily in a field of thistles. Such is my love among the young women. And my beloved among the young men is a branching apricot tree in the wood. In that shade I have often lingered, tasting the fruit. Now he has brought me to the house of wine, and his flag over me is love. Let me lie among vine blossoms in a bed of apricots. I am in the fever of love. his left hand beneath my head, his right arm holding me close. Daughters of Jerusalem, swear to me by the gazelles, by the deer in the field, that you will never awaken love until it is ripe. The voice of my love, listen, bounding over the mountains toward me across the hills. My love is a gazelle, a wild stag. There he stands on the other side of our wall, gazing between the stones. And he calls to me, hurry, my love, my friend, and come away. Look, winter is over. The rains are done. Wildflowers spring up in the fields. Now is the time of the nightingale. In every meadow you hear the song of the turtle dove. The fig tree has sweetened its new green fruit, and the young budded vines smell spicy. Hurry, my love, my friend, come away. My dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the shadow of the cliff, let me see you, all of you. Let me hear your voice, your delicious song. I love to look at you. We come to chapter 5 in discussion of the Song of Songs. A beautiful passage. What I mentioned before, the difficulty and confusion of looking at understanding the text as we read it is heightened because it seems that there's a passage here that's a dream sequence. But then other folks have said, well, the entire Song of Songs looks like it could all be a dream sequence. Chapter 5, verse 2. I was asleep, but my heart stayed awake. Listen. My lover knocking. Open, my sister, my friend, my dove, my perfect one. My hair is wet, drenched with the dew of night. But I have taken off my clothes. How can I dress again? I have bathed my feet. Must I dirty them? My love reached in for the latch, and my heart beat wild. I rose to open to my love, my fingers wet with myrrh, sweet flowing myrrh on the door bolt. I opened to my love, but he had slipped away. How I wanted him when he spoke. I sought him everywhere, but could not find him. I called his name, but he did not answer. And then the watchmen found me as they went about the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they tore the shawl from my shoulders, those watchmen of the walls. Swear to me, daughters of Jerusalem, if you find him now, you must tell him, I am in the fever of love. These verses evoke indecision on the part of the female lover. Her male lovers appeared at the door. Her heart is roused. That imagery that I was asleep but my heart was woken, that's something that the rabbis especially see in spiritual terms, speaking about all of us and the human condition, that we go through life with a bit of a fog. We're not aware, we're not tuned into God's presence, but our heart does tune in, and we hear the voice of our lover, or if you will, God, and we become alive. Well, anyways, the female lover here goes to open the door. She hesitates because she's already bathed. She doesn't want her to get her feet dirty. Her hair is wet, drenched with the dew of the night. And in that hesitation, that moment of hesitation, the lover goes and is not there anymore. And now her heart is full. She knows she wants her lover. She goes out to look for him. And then these watchmen appear on the city streets. And this is evocative of actually passages we know from the ancient civilization Assyria, where there are rules about the watchmen guarding and people keeping women inside and dressed and not out to go wander about the streets. That would be something that would not have been allowed. And so here in the Song of Songs, the watchmen beat her and bruise her, tear her shawl from her shoulders, whereas if they are reproaching her for being too free, going about the city without full clothing, yet they tear off more of her clothing. Look back to Sigmund Freud and his writing about repression. Is this a dream? Is this part of the self of the female lover that wants to go out, and another part of herself is berating herself for having these desires? We don't know. Is this a patriarchal voice of watchmen? Also, there are scenes later in the song of the brothers, her keepers. They don't want her going out and about to be meeting her lover. So there's a patriarchal power that seeks at several points in this song to restrain the female lover. But they don't prevail. This female ends the song described by her lover as a tower, like a citadel, powerful. So there's a place for love to prevail over this censorship. Covered herself in any inappropriate way. There's much yearning in the Song of Songs, but there's not a lot of clear evidence of consummation. This is not graphic in that sense. It's very suggestive. What chapter 5 in this dream sequence, if it is a dream sequence, brings up for me is this dialectic of the lover yearning for her lover and then stepping forward and almost having him, but not quite. And the same thing the rabbis feel is deeply characteristic of our pursuit of God. If you have any patience for religion and you feel like there is a God that's speaking to us through our tradition and through our prayer, we try to connect with that, then this dialectic can evoke that very elusive way that which we pursue God. And I think this is a good time to bring in one of these songs about which I'm excited to share with you. Ani Yeshena, the music of this chapter 5, verses that I read to you and am talking about here. It's something that I use sometimes to begin the Kabbalat Shabbat prayers for Friday evening, as one of my teachers showed me. I think it's very beautiful. Ani Yeshena v'li bi'er kol dodi dofek pitchili Ani Yeshena v'li bi'er Kol dodi dofek pitchili Achoti rayati yonati tamahati sheroshi nimlatak kavutzot tarasi selai Achoti rayati yonati tamahati sheroshi nimlata kivutso tarasi se lahayram narayram 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 Yairam, yarairam, yarairam, nam, nam. Yairairam, narairam, 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 narairam. God. And there's a beautiful text I found that the rabbis discuss in the context of Song of Songs, which is a parable that has nothing to do with lovers. But they picture a father who's walking along and sees his young son playing with children of a similar young age. And the father walks close enough so that the son can see him. over the heads of his playmates from a little distance. And the sight of the father evokes in the child a sudden desire to abandon the play with the playmates and to go chase after the father and to leave everything behind of the childish nature. And the parable goes on to describe the father then moving away and walking faster, just slowly enough so that the child can follow, but fast enough to keep at a distance, to somehow strengthen the desire in the child to be connected with the father. And I haven't always found when I come home that my children abandon their play with their friends to come embrace me, although sometimes that does happen. It's used to evoke that yearning of child for father or son for father. And similarly here, the rabbis see the Song of Songs describing the yearning of two lovers for each other as the spiritual seeker yearns for God. And as God, in our rabbi's conception, also yearns for us. The imagery of the child strongly yearning for the parent, or the lover strongly yearning for their partner, also works if you think about what it is to be human. I think that is something that philosophically and psychologically thinkers have talked about, that we strive to reach moments where we're fully in touch with what it is to be a human being, to be fully alive. And I think there's some analogy here to the yearning, whether it's of the lover for the lover, or the child for the parent, or the individual just to be fully connected to life and to our purpose, to our very reason being here in existence. Those are all tied up in the sensuality of this text, the Song of Songs. Now, another image that I want to bring into this discussion of some beauty, it refers to a phrase in chapter 4 of the Song of Songs, that I've come into my garden, a melody that a wonderful rabbi wrote that I'm not going to include here today, but he wrote about this melody, that it came to him when he was very much in love, and I had the sense of courting with it. But as it also is a metaphor for our relationship with God, the kavanah, intention for this chant, had to do with the question, where am I in my relationship with God? Very often I feel so far away, but then I recognize that I'm already there, in the garden of sacred union, in the knowledge that my innermost identity is nothing but God. As Reb Nachman of Bratslav says, if you want to hear God's voice, touch the dofek, the heartbeat, and then realize that kol dodi dofek, it is the beloved that is knocking, pulsating inside our hearts. See, this rabbi is suggesting that the heartbeat beating inside of us is God's voice. And when we feel alone and disconnected from God, come back to listen to our own heart and realize that God is here with us. A beautiful imagery. I'm going to share a series of Marc Chagall paintings, a series of 5, all to do with the Song of Songs. While these Chagall paintings are presented visually, I'm going to play Hinach Yafa by Idan Rachel, an Israeli artist, and that means how beautiful you are. And this song has many pieces of the lyrics of Song of Songs. That is going to conclude this presentation on the Song of Songs. One note to this concluding section because I'm playing with YouTube to bring you these recordings. YouTube is also playing with me and with us, and they're going to insert, I think you may see an advertisement or even two in this next section, as if you're watching me on TV. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of some of the aspects of this rich piece of our traditional and textual heritage. See you next time.
במיטתי כבר שבוע ביקשתי את שאהבה נפשי ולא מצאתי חיפשתי בין כל רחובות העיר העמוס השקרים הזאת ולא מצאתי עצרוני השומרים הסובבים בעיר החרובי כמעט ולא מצאתי אותו אך לא הרבה ממנו עד שאביו אל תוך עירי אל בית אמי ואל חדרי אל מיטתי עינך יפה ראיתי ושפתותייך חודשני שינייך לבנות כמו אור הלבנה מי זאת עולה מן המדבר מארץ רחוקה נישאת על כנף ציפור גדולה הגיעה לביתי במיטתי כבר שבועות ביקשתי את שאהבה נפשי ולא מצאתי חיפשתי בין כל רחובות העיר העמוס השקרים הזאת ולא מצאתי עצרוני השומרים הסובבים בעיר החרובי כמעט ולא מצאתי אותו אך לא הרבה ממנו עד שאביו אל תוך עירי אל בית אמי ואל חדרי אל מיטתי עינך יפה ראיתי ושפתותייך חודשני שינייך לבנות כמו אור הלבנה מי זאת עולה מן המדבר מארץ רחוקה נישאת על כנף ציפור גדולה הגיעה לביתי עינך יפה ראיתי אני נגנב משתי עינייך ששורפות אותי כאש הלהבה מי זאת עולה מן המדבר מארץ רחוקה נישאת על כנף ציפור גדולה הגיעה לביתי
Anneken bamata sete daginchate uletun atavro usersik nate Anneken bamata sete daginchate uletun atavro usersik nate Imashir wana sihetu nabite zirrafen aya saidi keta samat Anneken bamata tiena urkwalu ששורפות אותי כאש הלהבה מי זאת עולה מן המדבר מארץ רחוקה נישאת על כנף ציפור גדולה הגיעה לביתי